So very often people discuss, is it art or architecture? And the complexity is, of course, art and architecture is not the same. The thing is, though, that it works like a work of art. Every decision was made, like when I make artworks here in my studio and so on. So in that sense, for me personally, it's a work of art. I think that art and architecture can co-create something which is almost a third thing. It's just so important that we don't try to make the architects into artists and the artists into architects. It's really about doing something which allows the two different worlds, because I do think they're different, to sort of do something even stronger that they cannot do separately. And this, I think, is really amazing, and I really think that Fjordenhus is an example of that. The movement is how the building opens up. This, I think, is the beginning. This is how the building welcomes you. It tells you this is about combining something very physical with something very ephemeral, and it's about your movement through the spaces. That became kind of the narrative of how do we draw what seems to be highly complex with regards to the walls. If you look closer, it's actually quite subtle and minimal. To start on a project like this and to really go deep into the design, that requires a client that is quite courageous, because I have worked a lot with space and spatial experiments, but I have not built a building like that for sure. Even though I'm lucky to work with great architects here in the studio, and Sebastian Behmann is absolutely crucial in this, it is still very courageous for the client, the Kirk family, to come to the studio.
I think the central idea of the building is its setting within the environment, extending Vejle into the fjord, the relation to the city, to the harbour, to the water, and to all the other elements should be the story of the building. Starting from a circle really allows that it's more the environment that shapes the building than the building kind of shapes an environment. So the idea of the geometry was to actually take the volumes of, let's say, harbour buildings and open the building from the inside out in a very generous way. We have a series of vertical spaces that cut in the perimeter of the cylinders, in a way connecting the sky and the water. The spaces are not just simple cylinders, but they are kind of deformed by geometrical operation connecting a circle and an ellipse. And this kind of three-dimensional curve is actually the main design feature of the building when you see it from the outside. In the ground floor, the geometry of the building generated a sequence of spaces in between the environment, the harbour, and the building. It's a kind of foyer of the elements, one could say.
From the very early design stages, the building sits in the water and kind of grows out of the water. And in that way, the building sets a frame through which you can perceive these natural phenomena, or natural elements. The wind is blowing straight through, the way the light comes, all these qualities that we otherwise don't pay attention to. And I'm very interested in suggesting, well, this is also architecture. This is also about space and how we perceive space, the environment, the experience of it. As you walk around on the ground floor, because it's publicly accessible, there is nothing else going on than the building, there are the sculptures, and the presence of nature.
The complex geometry of the building asks in a way for a simple translation in the materials that we used. It basically consists of a wall system out of bricks, These bricks are multicolored. They have about 15 different colors and many different shapes. We integrated a lot of technical functions into the bricks, not only the acoustic, but also air intake, outtake. Fjordenhus is designed as an office building. To house these people in these kind of rounded volumes, we actually thought about how do people interact when they work. So we wanted to design a furniture system that actually respects and support the overall idea of the building of being kind of surrounded by this enormous environment.
And we started designing furnitures, which obviously is also about how do we work together. All the lamps, the lights. It's about designing the kind of experience which also guides you, gives you the narrative of the building.
The art and the architecture kind of plays, in a way, a ping pong that inspires each other and kind of emphasizes the importance of both. It's first of all an artistic approach into a kind of architectural discipline where the architectural thinking needs to come up with different solutions, different answers to the questions that are actually imposed by Olafur's art and his way of thinking and approaching projects like this.
Being in the building is about having a dialogue with the building. This whole notion of how to be conscious about your own presence really has to do with how we are conscious about being in the world. These are things that I work on a lot with my artworks, and I think the idea is not in the drawing or in the design, the idea is in the relationship with the design. As I use the building, I also, you could say, co-create or co-author my experience. So the experience is not in the building, in the idea, the experience is the way I use it. It gives you the feeling of being of some value, being in the building. And that is very generous. I think that's very important to say, well, people are the ones who essentially should own the experience.